All right. Wait for our friends in the audience to make it all the way through. Okay, hello everybody and welcome to the March 16th meeting of the Zoning Preservation and Development Committee. I am going to get us started with roll call and then I'll go quickly over the agenda and we will go from there. So, I'm here. Commissioner Kensek. Oops, that's a no. Jason Bello.
Here.
Fabulous. Karen Brueggemann.
Here.
Frank Chauvin. Aaron Pervin.
Hello.
Fabulous. Karen Gall.
Present.
Welcome. Brad Solian.
Here.
Joel Heisey. Say no. Yanyi Hong.
Here.
Patrick Nelson.
Here.
Jarrett Stroman.
Here.
Daniel Kramer. Alex Smith. Bruce Lippens. Devin Reed.
Here.
And Gabriel Gassman.
Here.
Wow, fabulous. Okay. So we did roll call. We have a light agenda, not light. Actually, these pieces of legislation are all pretty meaty, but we will just get started with introducing our new committee member, Jarrett Stroman, and then we will move on to the Housing Production Omnibus Amendment Act of 2026. Then we'll move on to the Fair Share Housing Targets Act, and then lastly, we'll discuss the One Front Door Act. Um, and then we will adjourn for the day. So, Jarrett, typically what I ask new committee members to do is to just quickly introduce yourself to all of us, let us know what your interest in the in ZPD, what ZPD is, and any sort of interesting fun fact you'd like to share.
All right, Jared Stroman. I've been in the Ward One since 2024, October 2024. I live in the Beauregard building on 11th and V Street. And since I've moved to the neighborhood, just really wanted to sort of get involved in different activities, different community engagements. And so I've joined the ANC meetings. Um, Zoning is just a huge part of city planning. I've always, done work in and around and related to housing. Um, and so this just seemed like a great opportunity. And so anyway, very excited to be here. If you're ever in the 11th and V area, I have a brand new, a 16-week-old golden retriever puppy that I'm always walking. And so if you like balls of cuteness, then you'll love baby Otis. Would love to meet you guys in person at some point, and happy to be here.
Hi, Jared.
Welcome.
You didn't even tell them the best news of all. Did I get you in here?
You sure did. You sure did. I should have led with that.
Exactly. Come on. That's your big lead.
That's right. That's right. Yep, yep, yep.
Awesome.
Um,
Well, we are happy to have you. Um, uh, Oop, I just muted myself in accident. I'm gonna get us started so that we can get plugging on this because I know some of these things are sort of big things. So essentially, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring these three pieces of legislation to the committee is because they're all relevant to housing development within the district, but also obviously within Ward One and ANC 1B. And because we're the committee that focuses mostly on the development process, for the ANC, I thought that it would be relevant for us to review these and then decide today whether or not it's something that we would like to explore through supporting through a resolution, or asking the ANC, excuse me, asking the ANC to support through a resolution. So that's kind of the frame of this conversation, is that we can decide today whether or not these pieces of legislation are things that we would like to bring to the full ANC through a resolution, and essentially how that would happen. For those of you who are new, is that if we decide that today, then we work on one, two, three resolutions, one for each of the different pieces of legislation. We review those resolutions at our next ZPD meeting, which would be April 20th. And then whichever ones of those we decide to support, we bring to the full ANC for their endorsement as well. But it's sort of like up to us. Like, we kind of can decide to endorse these or not. And I also understand if what would be more productive is if we talk about them today, we spend a little bit of time reviewing them by ourselves, and then we return to them at the next committee meeting, because some of these are relatively meaty. And there's also a tiny little caveat that I'll share um, with the One Front Door Act, because that has advanced since I originally sent this out. It has advanced beyond the uh, sort of, I think it's out of committee, or it's almost being adopted. And so we're a little bit behind the eight ball on that one, which is why I put it last. So the very first one that's on our list is probably the biggest. It is omnibus um, uh, the Housing Production Omnibus Amendment Act. And so essentially, the other thing that I'll just mention, I was mentioning this a little bit before we got on, is that um, because I think because it's election season, every council member is busy doing election-y things, and so they could not actually get somebody from Councilmember Nadeau's office or Councilmember White's office. He co-authored this. They were not available to come. The legislative folks were not available to come to this meeting. However, I was able to meet with separately Councilmember Nadeau's legislative director, David Meny, who gave me a little bit of an overview about these. So I'm going to just share what he told me, and then we can discuss. And then if it's something that we'd like to explore through a resolution, we can talk about that. So first up is the Housing Production Omnibus Act. So this does a couple of things. The biggest thing is this housing opportunity fund, which would replace the. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see it a little bit better. It would replace the existing Housing Production Trust Fund, and as you can see, a sort of range of other programs that would be all sort of unified under a master fund, which this act would be calling the Housing Opportunity Fund. And so essentially, as it outlines here, it's divided, it would be organized into 5 different sub-accounts, each dedicated to a specific purpose. And so there's the housing production, affordable housing subsidy, preservation, tenant purchase support, which would help tenants buy their buildings under the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. And then the district acquisition account, which would enable the strategic use of public land for housing development. Um, so that's kind of like the signature piece of this. But the bill is really intended, or at least what Councilmember Nadeau's legislative director shared with me, is that the bill is really intended um, to support the production of all kinds of housing, market rate and affordable housing. And so you can see that as part of the goal in these 5 different accounts. But then in addition to that, it introduces a few different tools to increase the production of housing in the district. So first, as you can see on the screen, it permits district retirement funds to invest in local housing development. It gives the district government more power to acquire land for housing in high need areas. and it lets the district purchase and lease land to developers or tenant groups to keep housing affordable. Um, Financing tools to jumpstart projects on public land with a revolving loan fund, and then it strengthens the district's ability to buy properties under the District Opportunity to Purchase Act, or assign those purchase rights to affordable housing developers. Um, so that's kind of like the general approach of this legislation. The way that Mr. Meny, the legislative director for Councilmember Nadeau, framed it is that it's really intended at taking a sort of holistic approach to the particularly to the financial parts of housing development within the district, and in particular the parts of that the district has control over. Um, so certainly not a comprehensive piece of housing legislation in the sense that there are definitely other things that the district could be doing to, in my opinion at least, to enhance the development of affordable housing and housing more broadly. But this does seem like a pretty specific way of focusing on something that often is not um, easy to for in my experience at least for municipalities to address, and that's the financing part. Um, so that's the introduction. It's short and sweet. There's obviously 37 pages to this bill, so there's a lot more detail um, in there. But that's my sort of non-expert third hearsay overview of this bill. And I see, Karen, you have a question.
Well, actually, the only one of the main parts that I've heard issues in the community about was using the retirement funds for this bill.
Oh,
That
interesting.
is that has been a really big issue, especially where there's been a manipulation of retirement funds before, and some people have had issues with that. Outside of that, I hadn't heard anything else about that community wise. So
What was the do you can you share more about the concern there? Or do you like
well, we've had a history of having some incidents with the use of retirement funds before. We had a teachers union issue where there was a use of their retirement funds here in the DC area, and so the use of retirement funds for the DC retirement funds was an issue that had come up historically. So I think that's the reason why that particular concern came up. Of course, anything about housing affordability is always important, but where the money is tapped in from is also important too. So, you
yeah,
know, that's I'm only speaking from just community information
that's
that
really
I've
interesting.
gathered. Yes.
Well, that I mean, I hadn't I that didn't come up in my conversation with David, so that's really interesting. Do you remember, based on what you've heard, Karen, if that was about like the money from the retirement funds being invested inappropriately and then not making a return, or was it something else?
The I didn't get into the full weeds
Okay,
of it because of the simple fact that, I wanted to sort of get the group think on this. And also because it just popped up with us.
sure,
I
sure.
I didn't want to overly ask too many questions just yet. But I just know that that was kitchen table conversations with some community members on that.
Thank you, Karen. And I mean that's a relevant thing to follow up with David about Nyanyi. You have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Yeah, I think we obviously I haven't read the 37-page report, and I think the details really matter, like Karen has mentioned. But I think on the whole, just looking at it, I think this bill seems to do a lot to support the building of more housing. I think expanding the funding for housing, I think, is really important. I've heard from some especially affordable homes developers that the financing situation in DC right now isn't particularly strong. Interest rates are really high.
Yeah.
but buying land is still very expensive. So things that could help unlocking financing to kind of build that. I think that seems like that would be a good thing to do. I think having tenant protections, kind of focusing a little bit on that, is probably a step in the right direction there as well. I think it seems to be much, more in the weeds than some other things that we might, So I saw the other one, the other two bills that you mentioned. One of them is, pretty straightforward. One is like, oh, single stair housing. This is a little bit more in the weeds
Yeah,
on financing. So I think it's probably good to, dig into it. But on the face, it looks like something that would be helpful for housing.
cool. Jarrett.
Just two quick points in support of what was just said. Niani, is that how you pronounce Niani? Yeah, I agree with you that the goal of the bill seems to be something we would support. Having more finance and more funding for this is uh I mean, it seems pretty straightforward. The question is how you do it. And then it gets me to Karen's point. Uh, I always say you never knock down a wall until you know why it was put up. And uh, previously, I mean, at some point there was, I mean, currently it's prohibited to invest retirement funds for this purpose. And I guess my question would be, I mean, why? Was there a reason that was initially prohibited? And then what steps
Yeah.
have been taken in this bill to sort of to either to prop up or to mitigate that concern, or maybe that concern is no longer there. But either way, I'd want us to think about that.
Yeah. Jason, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Um, Look, so I think we're all on, at least what I'm hearing is a lot of agreement on the problem. And I agree with the problem as much as anybody else. I struggle a little bit to understand if this is the best solution or not without people who are intimately
Yeah.
involved with this on either side. And I think the most productive conversation would be to invite somebody who is either a staunch defender of or a writer of this alongside somebody who is opposed to this and get their respective thoughts because it's just very, I mean, it is pretty detailed and it is pretty technical. And I feel like if we were to vote to support this right now, we'd be voting that we agree with the problem more so than voting that we agree with the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the sort of level of detail that's involved in this. Um, I think ideally when we discuss it, like if this is something that basically I would volunteer myself unless anyone else wants to write the resolution, which we can discuss at the next meeting, but I wouldn't want us to be voting on something like that for this something that's detailed unless we had a member of either Councilmember White's office or Councilmember Nadeau's office to share with us more information about the details of this so that we really know. And also answer the question about the that we have about the retirement accounts, for instance. Um, I will try. I think
And
you're
if there is a group that's
right.
publicly opposed to it, it would be great to invite them to
Totally.
participate.
Yes. I haven't heard enough about whether or not there's a group that's opposed to it, although I would imagine that there's someone out there who would be willing to speak to that, so I can do some digging um about that. And I see Patrick, you have your hand up. I also just want to acknowledge that I think one of our community members has their hand up. So once we finish with committee member comments, I'll open it up to the community member audience. But Patrick, you have your
So just to get some information for people that are not aware of how this works. First of all, Karen's point is well made. That was a long-term issue way back when. And I think just clarification of whether or not this is an open investment, kind of
yeah.
like put on the market kind of thing. It was not that way before, so she's correct in that. Second point that I want to make is that the current housing trust fund is all controlled by the mayor, and it's funded through the budget. So this is breaking it up and in essence taking one single fund that she has control over now and breaking it up and giving it a little bit more authority to touch on other parts of housing that are not controlled by the current housing trust fund. Without sounding mean or vicious, it's more like a slush fund for her to do what she wants. She dictates where the money goes and who gets it. And at this is a trying to amend that and make it more, shall I say, user-friendly for outside sources. There are some concerns that I have that I'll need to really look through the legislation on, but in general, I think this is a step in the right direction to move from the current format we have to a new format.
I'm glad you brought that up, Patrick, because there was a neighboring ANC. Just for some context for people, I think it was 1A, which is just north of us. So there's a neighboring ANC that wrote a few resolutions last year or a year and a half ago. One was regarding the Rental Act, which was the mayor's signature housing piece of housing legislation, and TOPA, and then there was some other stuff in there. And in when I was talking, we didn't end up writing any resolutions, um, or really working on that at the time. But something that came up in the conversation that I had with the zoning person, the chair of their zoning committee, was this issue that you just talked about with regard to the Housing Production Trust Fund, that it's not being used, like the various different housing funds that this district has are not really being utilized in a way that most uh, like people who work in housing development in the district think makes much sense. And that's about as much information as I have about it, but I'm just sort of echoing what you said, Patrick, that I've heard that concern in the past. Um, and then also I saw
I'll
Karen.
also add, just as a point
Yeah.
of information that most people don't know, that the Housing Trust Fund is also used as leverage for developers to get around the system of
Interesting.
going
Okay.
to BZA and getting certain things done by committing to just donating money to the
Oh,
trust fund.
yes.
So this is, in my opinion, someone who's been dealing with this for a while, that this is a step in the right direction. It may need to be tweaked and it may have some problems on its own, but this is a huge improvement over the current system that we're using now.
And Karen, you shared in the chat something from the National Housing Crisis Toolkit.
Yeah, as someone who, I'm not a housing expert, but I wanted to have some context as I was reading these, and I found this helpful. This is some colleagues are running this National Housing Crisis Task Force. It's a bipartisan group of mayors and governors and other folks who want to advance housing construction and increasing affordable housing and also tackling homelessness. And it does a good job of kind of laying out at the state and local level what the different types of tools are to tackle this. And it's like land, capital, construction, regulation and policy, governance. I know a lot of you know a lot more about this than I do, but it is like this housing opportunity fund is on the capital side and it's like it's a public investment. But it helped me contextualize it quickly before reading it. So for whatever it's worth. But I know there's like National League of Cities and some other folks also have similar toolkits and whatnot.
Yeah. Thank you. Um, is there any other committee member who wants to add a comment before I turn to the participants for their comment or question? Okay. I see, Courtney, you have your hand back up, so I'm going to click allow you to talk, and I think you should be able to unmute.
Hi there. Thank you. Just to comment a little bit on why one would not want their pension generally in real estate is it's just generally considered a riskier investment that's not liquid enough. So that's kind of the general no-no for most investors to not want to dump pension retirement funds into real estate investments. The other thing that's like maybe a little bit more, I don't know, maybe not as universally agreed upon is something that it, drives up basically costs for the same people whose retirement funds are being used. So it's this kind of like um, self-defeating investment is how that is described as. Um, and I wanted to comment on, the part that concerned me in this document, one of them, is actually kind of what your colleague mentioned about how right now it's a little bit pay to play. A developer can dump money into the fund and they get a bid or something. That's kind of still in here. That's what stood out to me when I did a quick read through. That would be on page 8, grants, fees, donations, or gifts from public and private sources. I just don't understand how that all works. And does that does some of this lead to a total buy right non-process, I guess, especially if one is a contributor to the fund? Thank you.
Hmm. So you're talking about on page 8. Um, oh, maybe it's page 8, the
Line 99.
line 99. There we go. Oh yes, communal contributions made pursuant to the DC RIB grants, fees, public and private sources, proceeds realized from liquidation of security interests. Oh yes, interesting. Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. Um, okay. Uh,
I guess my last point is Councilmember Nadeau is not running for re-election, so her team hopefully will be available and not burdened by campaign goings on, perhaps for your next meeting. Thank you.
yes, I mean, council member Nadeau's legislative director is at a conference at the moment, a housing conference, in fact, which so he's not burdened by re-election, but he is burdened by other things. Okay, thank you, Courtney. I'm going to send you back to the participants. The other thing that just came to mind also is that some of you may know that I'm a planner in Alexandria, and I would be curious to understand how the proponents of this bill think about this. But in general, when we're working on development projects, we like to get things in kind and not through cash donations. So by that, what I mean is when a uh, project comes in that requires affordable housing, we usually like to get the affordable units constructed by the developer as opposed to have the cash equivalent of that donated to a housing trust fund. The housing trust fund does exist, and we do still get developer contributions. So, sometimes that's what the um, affordable component of the development is for one reason or another. But it's usually in my sort of planner feeling. I don't know if this is best practice versus Christian's opinion, is that having stuff in kind is usually better than having stuff donated by cash. Um, but I think something that's really interesting about this bill is that it addresses the specific types of housing assistance in the district where having cash on hand from the district is actually really instrumental, like TOPA, for instance, helping with TOPA stuff.
Part of the
Um,
problem with that, Christian, is that the point that you made is that, which is valid. I agree with that. But my experience in the past is that that's how they get around the system is they don't they do that so that they don't have to go in front of the BZA or
Totally.
the zoning commission. They negotiate that through OP or through whoever they're getting their plans drawn up on, and it never hits the community. So you never know unless there is an issue that comes up that they have to come out and talk about it. I mean, there was one case that I remember years ago where a developer was trying to get over the height limit of an RA2 zone and create more density. and they came to the ANC and tried to get us to support it, and they just came right out and said, well, if you don't want to support us, we're going to go to the zoning board and make a contribution to the trust fund so we can get it done that way. So that's part of why I brought that up is
Yeah.
it's shady how they do those things.
Well,
Not to diss on developers, but they know how to work the system just like lawyers do,
of course.
and that's
I work with many of them, so.
yeah.
Um, Gabe, you have your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a very small technical point, and this may be getting beyond kind of our collective technical expertise and
Yeah,
my limited research, but I do think the housing opportunity funding as the bill is written comes through bonds. So I think just in terms of the point about sort of the safety of opening this up to pension investing and stuff, like it's not um there's a backup in terms of what recourse like a pension fund might have to
mm,
a project that goes badly. Like this is backed up by the city. um
got it.
so yeah, I could be misunderstanding, but that's in like a brief skim of the bill. I do think that offers some like protection, to any sort of
Sure.
individual pension holder who might be concerned about risky investments. Um, I'd also add I was reading a little bit about like Nadeau's like kind of justification for that, and she at least said, and I have not fact checked this, was that it seems to have been prohibited by a misplaced preposition in the current um, the current law, like banning investment in this, and that
Oh,
she wants to make
interesting.
this largely as a kind of technical change to what at least she believes was the intent of the original law prohibiting investments in real
Huh.
estate. So, um, yeah, that didn't strike me, I guess, is all to say is something that, I had a huge concern about. But yeah, I want to be humble at the same time about my sort of knowledge here.
Totally. Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. Um, okay, well, it sounds like um I and the rest of us feel like we probably need a little bit more insight on this before we proceed, which I think is totally reasonable. And also, of all of three of the ones that we're considering, this is the most recently introduced, so I think we're not really at risk of missing the legislative process or being out of sync with the legislative process on this. Um, and so I think my proposal for you and maybe what we can do is if you feel differently, feel free to let me know. But my proposal is that we work to get someone from either Councilmember Nadeau or Councilmember White's office, because they're the two co-sponsors of this bill, to get one of their staff. Honestly, it's probably going to be Councilmember Nadeau just because Councilmember White is running for election. Um, but we'll see if we can get someone from their staff to come to our next ANC meeting to discuss this. And then I will also work on your suggestion, Jason, on identifying if there's someone who can speak to the an opposing viewpoint on this. So I'll do a little bit of digging to see if I can find someone who's in the know and able to talk to us about that point of view as well. Does that sound, does anyone not agree with that approach?
I would say, Christian,
Yeah.
one is that the two people that introduced the bill are running for re-election, so they probably will no longer be on the council. That said,
I guess
that
Nadeau's not running, so.
right. That said, the two people that are co-sponsoring it, one is running for mayor and the other is not. It might be to your advantage to talk to Charles Allen and
Oh,
see how he feels, because
that
once
is a good
those other
point.
two are no longer on the council, it needs a current council person to push it through.
Right. That's a very good point. Okay. I think that's a great suggestion. I can reach out to I'll reach out to Councilmember Nadeau's office just because she is our counselor and she's one of the primary sponsors, but I'll reach out to Councilmember Allen's office too, just to see if we can get someone from them. Um, okay, unless anyone has any other notes or comments that they'd like to add, I will move us on to the next piece of legislation. Thankfully, both of the following things are less ginormous and a little bit more straightforward. So, this is also a piece of legislation that was introduced by Councilmember Nadeau, and so along with, and it's sort of co-sponsored by these five people. Um, oopsies, sorry. And uh, I was able to speak with her legislative director, David Meny, about this piece of legislation. It was, as you can see, released in December, and it's called the Fair Share Housing Targets Act of 2025. So essentially, um, the purpose of this bill, as described to me and also described here, is to support the mayor in enforcing the housing development targets that are set across the city. So, um, some of you may know that DC met its $36,000, 36,000 unit target ahead of schedule, but that was not accounted for equally across the district. Um, and this is we're getting a little bit into sort of, anyway, oop, sorry, it just disappeared from my screen. There we go. Um, oh my God, my computer is having a moment. Okay, so um, while we met the 36,000 unit target, it wasn't the result of an equal contribution across the district, and there were four planning areas in the district that exceeded their affordable housing targets and six that fell short. Planning areas are basically a geography within the district that is utilized to understand development processes. I'm heavily paraphrasing, so it's more nuanced than that. But um, so the purpose of this is to sort of establish a process that would assess why the planning areas fell short, and address any barriers that might have caused that um, to happen. Uh, so there's a lot of sort of. I think this is another one of those bills that's particularly uh, it's not the sort of most extensive bill, but it is a little bit wonky, and so I wanted to just really quickly go through some of the key components. So, see if I can find the thing. So basically, those of you know, some of you may know this, but every 5 years, the mayor publishes and transmits to council housing targets for each planning area of the district, and they have to include a certain amount of things. And you can see that list in front of you, but it's primarily general housing production target, a target for the production of affordable housing specifically, and then start and end dates, and then a methodology that's used to track and understand this production, to make sure that the planning area is actually resulting in those units being produced. Um, in addition, uh, it has to be publicly accessible, and I think Nanya, you shared the dashboard. If I'm not looking at the Zoom screen, but I think that's what you shared in the chat. And that just helps us track things. And then the District of Columbia auditor will audit this information provided by the mayor. Um, so the primary sort of method by which a planning area will be evaluated as to whether it has met its um, target is that if it has not had sufficient units of housing produced within the boundaries, um, established by the mayor's office. Each planning area is subject to that, and then basically what will happen is that when that planning area does not like if it doesn't meet its target, the mayor can appoint what's called an qualified independent evaluator to assess why that housing production um, or why that particular planning area didn't meet its target. And so that evaluator will transmit to council and the mayor a report basically outlining what these issues were. And then in addition, and I'm looking at line 60 in particular, the independent evaluator selected by the mayor may petition the zoning commission on behalf of the district for amendments within or related to that planning area um, that would sort of help to address the um, lack of or the fact that that planning area didn't meet its planning targets. And so obviously there's lots of reasons. I think we can all think of reasons why a development area or a planning area, excuse me, might not meet its planning targets. Some of them could be that it's very expensive in that particular area, and so there's not as much development interest, or the it would require the assemblage of lots of lots because it's maybe the planning area is mostly single family homes, and those are things that just aren't really developing in the same way that like we see in our ANC, for instance. But in any case, um, the independent evaluator that the mayor selects can petition the zoning commission on behalf of the district for amendments within or related to the planning area. So this is one method by which the mayor's office and then the evaluator can pursue a remedy to the issue of not meeting the planning area's housing production targets. Um, so then the mayor can submit amendments to the relevant planning area, the future land use map, sorry, the relevant planning area element, which within the comprehensive plan, that would be an amendment to that planning area, the future land use map, and other elements that might be necessary to reduce barriers. And I see you have your hand up, Jason. Give me 1 second. Um, and then essentially the council adopts a fiscal impact statement in the committee report as the fiscal impact statement is required by the general legislative procedures. Oh, wait, we don't need to, sorry, we don't need to review that. That's basically just saying what will this cost to implement. Anyway, so essentially the purpose of the way in which this bill works is that the mayor can set these targets, and with the approval of council, will set these targets. If those targets are not met by a particular planning area, the mayor can appoint an evaluator that's independent of the mayor's office. That evaluator will make a determination as to any number of reasons why that planning area didn't meet its target, and then the evaluator can propose solutions to that through amendments to relevant pieces of legislation and pieces of zoning. So that's kind of like the very high level um, summary of that. It's a little bit wonky, but it's I do think that it is more straightforward than it originally seems. So Jason,
Yeah.
to
Do you know if 1B uh met its development targets?
yes, actually, thank you for asking. Because I think this is probably on the dashboard, so I don't have that open in front of me, so hopefully if I'm wrong about this, somebody will correct me. But the planning, all of the planning areas that are in Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 4, 6, and 7 and 8, maybe not 7, but definitely 8, met our housing production requirements. And Ward 1 at like well, Neon, you just mentioned in Mid City, which is the planning element that we're part of, it far exceeded our production requirements. So this is really not something that would like based on the previous development, like the previous period of our housing targets, we would not have been subject to the special I almost said investigator, special evaluator. Um, but there are areas in the city, I think mostly in my understanding at least, is mostly in Upper Northwest and in Ward 7 that did not meet their production requirements. And so they would, under this piece of legislation, would have been had a special evaluator sort of go in and try to determine what the cause of that was. Nyani, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what you said. So I sent over the 2025 dashboard, which details the units for the housing goal there. And we're in the mid-city planning element. So we did surpass both for affordable housing and for regular housing units.
Hmm.
I think this is really great. I think the 2025 dashboard is really useful. I think you can really see kind of the disparities in the housing targets. You can really see which places are not holding up their own, and they are generally the wealthier, more exclusive, previously redlined areas, uh, far northwest, uh, west of Rock Creek, Capitol Hill, some very exclusive neighborhoods. I think this is like really important to make sure that these neighborhoods really hold up their fair share and build their units as well, and don't really burden the places that do build lots of units. I think that this is really important. It does seem like there's not a big enforcement mechanism on like what they can do if this doesn't happen. So I think it's good as just like a reporting tool, but it really seems like it's kind of like a slap on the wrist, like, oh, you didn't meet this housing target. Like, we're gonna appoint this investigator, and he's gonna like look into how you might be able to do it more. So that is, it doesn't have a lot of teeth, but I think just like having the statistics alone, just having this dashboard, making sure that this is reported, especially affordable housing units. I think that that's really important.
Jason, did you still have another?
No.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I agree with you, Nyani, and I actually asked David Many this question too, because I think we've seen, especially in some of the far northwest neighborhoods that you were just referencing, that there is a lot of restrictive zoning, but also like the land, it's really difficult to purchase land there for all kinds of reasons, not the least of which being that the type of development that or the type of development that is currently there is primarily single family, and those don't single family homes really just don't turn over at nearly the same rate. And so I was a little curious to know what things might be proposed by what they envision, what the office envisioned, what might be proposed by the special evaluator in instances where the uh, planning area didn't meet its housing targets. And essentially, it seems like it could be changes to the FLUM to encourage development on, like, for instance, changes to I could see this happening on, like, Connecticut Avenue or Wisconsin Avenue, changes to the FLUM that would add density or change the zoning in some way that maybe if it's not by density, it's by incentive or something like that, or expanding uses or enabling mixed use in a place where you wouldn't have been able to have mixed use. Yes, FLUM. Sorry, FLUM is future land use map. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the FLUM, um, you're lucky. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It is basically during the comprehensive plan, the district's Office of Planning will develop what's called the future land use map, and that is what they hope. That's what they want the zoning to be like in however many years the comprehensive plan takes. And so when you are we'll actually be talking about this next week because just yesterday got a zoning petition that we'll be looking at that talks a lot about the phlegm. So it's a relevant time for us to be diving into the phlegm. But essentially, it says like in 15 years, we want the land use here to look like this. And so if you're a developer proposing a zoning change, you have to comply with the phlegm. You can't, unless you, I mean, there's obviously exceptions to this. But generally speaking, the FLUM's articulating where we want land use to be. And so if the update to the FLUM would happen, it would essentially change the expected land use. And so the developer would have to then do something propose something that complied with the expected land use. It also expands the what's possible to do in the future. And so it basically can, for instance, add land uses that are either more dense or maybe mixed use where there wasn't mixed use before. And so it can be a tool to give developers more flexibility. Obviously, it can also be a tool to restrict flexibility if that's something that we want to. Um, anyway, so that's what this piece of legislation is saying, and what the legislative director said to explain to me is that one of the tools could be a change that the mayor's office and or the special evaluator can propose a change to the FLUM that would facilitate the development of more housing. For instance, that's not the only thing that they can do, but that's one thing they can do. So, any other questions or thoughts? I see, Courtney, you have your hand up, and I'll do the same thing we did last time. Um, so I'll wait to see if anyone else has comments. Um, okay. Before we move on, I am just actually going to share the dashboard with the planning areas on it so that just because I actually was just looking at that and I thought it was really helpful to contextualize. Um, so I know it's a little bit hard to see because we're um, on a little screen, but we are in this planning area right here called Mid City. Um, And you can see that actually the planning area that had the most amount of housing development was far southeast and southwest, which is Ward 8. And the planning area that had the least was Rock Creek West. That's what it's described as. And I think the second least was Capitol Hill, followed by what was called Near Northwest, which I think is a lot of, just based on this, looking at this map, it's a lot of like parts of maybe Ward 2 and Georgetown, essentially. Um, so that just gives you a sense of like the geography that we're looking at here. So I'm gonna actually leave that up on the screen because I thought it was really helpful to look at, and I will get back to the webinar and I will go to, unless any other does a committee member have a question before I move to Courtney in our audience? Okay. Okay, Courtney, you should be able to unmute.
Hi there. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt the committee's discussion.
Oh, this is why we have this part.
This document's why I joined tonight. Is there an outline of the individual area goals for each segment of the city? These aren't wards, I take it, but each neighborhood.
Yes.
I see. There you go. Yeah, I couldn't get back to that dashboard online. They're kind of just all generalized these days. Um, yeah, and I think that, what I found over the last few years with the target is here in the mid city, even once even once we reached our target, which was very early on, um, it was never, it kind of didn't matter when it came to like some of the more like political side of development activities. And so I was often left with, wondering, well, what do the goals even matter then if you meet and exceed them? Yet there's still a super hard push for specific developments like 1617U. And, the FLUM is really where that started, of course, because folks should not underestimate the power of the FLUM. Nadu, in the middle of COVID, had used that FLUM, changed that FLUM so that essentially the vision is the entire length of U Street going to and past Connecticut Avenue. Um, they've basically worked to upflum that so that U Street corridor would look much like, Noma is what the goal would be with that. And it's like you said, very boring, but very powerful because it's kind of the underpinning of what folks are allowed to do, including the comprehensive plan. I guess my general like kind of commentary slash question is, once an area has reached their goal and exceeded it by like a terrific number, again, that doesn't seem, the goal is either an accurate goal to be striving for as an area, or it's not. And it kind of seemed like it wasn't in the Mid-City case over the last few years. It kind of didn't matter that we had like tripled past our goal.
I'm, I mean, I'm not the person who can answer that question. But it is an intriguing question. I can reach
Yeah,
out to Councilmember Nadeau's office and see uh,
well, yeah,
if if they have been asked that before. But I
yeah.
think I just wanted to mention, Yanni added in the chat, I'd see the goal as a bare minimum rather than a target, which I think is generally how I would approach that too. But and also I think it's important to note that the district can't stop development. So probably some of this was development that was going to happen whether or not uh, or we're not the
Goal
district. It's not
set.
that they
Yeah,
can't stop development. I think what I mean to say is that we can't just the district is not legally able to say, well, once you reach this number, whatever it is, there's no more development because we've reached our goal. They like we might
right.
reach the goal and then and this is the case for literally every municipality in the country. You can't just we're not allowed to just stop development. So I maybe it's maybe the goal, one way of thinking about it is maybe that the goal was unrealistically low, or I know we went through a really big building boom, and in Mid City it's already relatively dense, and so it's kind of like a natural place for that type of development to happen. But I think that's a really good question, Courtney, and I'm happy to ask the council member's office for feedback on that.
Well, the question is more so, how are the individual goals developed? I don't think there seems to be any insight revealed into that. And then I think the other point is, like look at Southwest, Southeast with that 234. I think folks keep that in mind when there's pushes for things like uh, bypassing reviews and that sort of thing with development, like we currently are having the discussion at the larger ANC. That's where that sort of development goes on, and you can see it in these numbers.
I do also, I think just a really quick response to that one question that you had. I don't know how they, I mean, I think I could probably find this if I went digging, but just on this map, the dark green is affordable units and the light green is newly covenanted existing units. So these are affordable units. These aren't just this is not just um, any units. These are all affordable units. And so newly covenanted would be units that were existing but have become affordable through a covenant. And then the other one is which also, just to call back to the previous piece of legislation, there's part of the Housing Opportunity Fund would be addressing the ability of the district to covenant units. And then also the other one is new affordable production units. And if you scroll up to this housing across planning areas, it says, as part of the housing framework for equity and growth, the district sets targets for new affordable housing for each planning area. These targets represent the amount of new affordable units needed in each planning area by 2025 in order for 15% of housing units, all housing units in each planning area to be affordable by 2050. The following charts and map, blah, 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 blah. You get the point. So that's at least the explanation of the affordable housing unit numbers. So I don't know about the housing production targets, but I just as you were talking, Courtney, I just noticed that. So I thought I would share. But I can investigate farther, and I will, when I hear an answer, I will share that with you because I'm also curious about that question, Courtney. Um, I am going to go to Gabe next.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to highlight the same kind of 50%, 15% affordable by planning area stat and just note that like in addition to overall housing affordability in the district, I see this and some of the predecessors they're clearly drawing on, like New Jersey has a very similar kind of
Hmm.
legacy of Supreme Court cases that I think it's pretty clear they're drawing on here. Um, I think the harm is located not only in overall unaffordability, but also in sort of an inability for many people to like move around their home state or home city. And that, like, if you look at this map, like Rock Creek West created 125 new affordable units in this period. And,
Hmm.
I think in addition to sort of the overall unaffordability of DC, we're also still like a very racially and economically segregated city. And I think this is something I would really support in that it addresses both kind of overall stock of affordable housing, but also its distribution throughout the city. And I think that's just an important contribution to some of the more general sort of contributions to overall affordable housing
Yeah.
supply.
Aaron.
Yeah, I just wanted so just to clarify though, if this would not be affecting Mid City or any constituency within Mid City, even though we did not meet the affordable housing target, because we met the overall housing target.
I think we did
Our,
meet the affordable housing target.
oh, okay. Because I thought on that chart it looked
Oh,
like
no, I'm looking at it.
the dark shade of green did not meet the target, which I guess you could make an
It
argument.
did. Okay, this is somewhat confusing. These are both affordable units.
I see.
They're
Okay.
just arising in different ways. One is newly
I see.
produced, one is newly covenanted.
I see. Okay,
Tongue
never mind.
twister. But yeah, I think to answer your question, I don't think it would really impact 1B like basically at all because we far exceeded. Um, at least the special evaluator part wouldn't impact 1B. Or a lot of Word 1 at least. So um That's my overview for you of this piece of legislation. It was written by Councilmember Nadeau's office, so I did hear it from I did learn about it from the person who wrote it. So I feel confident that I understand what their purpose of it is. I'm wondering if anyone has any other questions about it or concerns that we might want to um, address in order for us to consider anything like a resolution about this. Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
You know what? There was we mentioned this earlier for the other act that we were considering. I really like when people who draw up these come in with their representatives to sort of speak on it because we're speculating a lot right now, and I really want to see them here to sort of give us
Yes.
some additional overview language about what's going on. And as Courtney mentioned, there are a lot of things that are popping up that, once we have a chance to digest it and hear from their point of view, and also to look at this a little bit more thoroughly, I think we are going to have more people to come in to sort of counter this information. And if knowing our community and how things affect our community, and then also because 1B has a tendency to influence the broader district community, I think it's really important that we sort of table this until we get the people that is really behind this here. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I will say I have asked the office to be present at our next ZPD meeting. So the request is out there in the ether, because I also feel similarly, Karen. But I wanted to get us started on a conversation now so that we could be prepared by the time that happened. Any other questions or concerns about that? Okay. I do have a proposal with this, and that is that in my sort of personal interest on this, I am very interested in this piece of legislation, and so something that I would be happy to do is create a very draft version of a resolution that we can edit together after we learn more from the council member's office, so that if we have the council member there and we are interested in this, after hearing from the council member's office and hearing from any other comments, if we're interested in this, we can move forward with a piece of with a resolution. I'm happy to draft something so that we can have that ready for us and make any necessary edits to it in time for the next meeting. And mostly I'm thinking about this because this piece of legislation has been out in the policy wilderness for a little bit, and so I don't want us, if we are genuinely interested in it, I don't want us to miss the legislative window for um, adopting a resolution in support of that. Um, if anybody is not supportive of that, feel free, please definitely let me know. But just want to be clear that we're under no obligation to actually um, even vote on the resolution if we have the council member's office here next week and decide we're not interested in it. I just want us to be prepared. I don't feel quite as comfortable doing that with the omnibus bill because there's so much in it that I'm not sure that I would really be able to write a it's way more complicated, so I don't know if I'd actually be able to write a good resolution um, for that. So if you are, and then also just an open invitation, if you would like to work with me on the resolution, please let me know. On the draft language for the resolution, please let me know and we can connect offline. So I'm gonna leave a beat for us to sort of, if anybody has concerns about that approach, um, I'll leave a beat for us, and then otherwise we can move on to the next piece of legislation. Okay, fabulous. Um, I think I'm not sharing my screen anymore, so let me just quickly do that. Okay, so this one I think is of all of the things that we're working on, probably, or that we're looking at today, probably the most straightforward, and I'm trying to get to the little tab to switch. Oop, hold on. My computer's being a pain in my butt. Hold on. Thanks for coming, Jason.
I think the weather is affecting everybody's Wi-Fi and stuff right now.
You know, this is unfortunately for me not a Wi-Fi problem, but maybe my computer's just mad at me. I wasn't very nice to it earlier. I yelled at it, so it might just be mad at me. Um, Hold on 1 second while I get this piece of legislation up. Ugh. Okay. Um, what on earth? I can't figure out, I can't seem to get this. Um, I can't seem to I am only
Do you
finding
want
my
one of us to help you? I mean, is
Yeah,
it
actually that
something?
would be great. Since I
What do
know
you
that I
want me
sent
to
this
pull
out,
up?
if one of you would be willing to pull up the One Front Door Act, that would be wonderful. For
Okay.
some reason, when I am opening my Adobe, all I open is the toolbar, and I can't
Okay.
open
Give
the
me a
actual
second.
screen. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that a lot.
No problem. I'll go. I was
So
just
the
looking at it.
proposed that disable participants sharing screen. I don't know if Karen, you're getting that, but that's what happens when I try to share.
Oh, let me
Well, I
I
have
can
it up. I mean,
let me make you a co-host, Karen, and then I think you should be able to share your screen.
okay, excellent. Okay. Ba, 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 ba. Okay. And can you all
Okay.
see this?
Yes, I can. Fabulous.
Are you
Thank
able to
you.
see?
I can. It's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Let me close that. Let me open that. You're quite welcome.
Okay.
How would you like for me to proceed, my dear?
If you would scroll down, um, yeah. Okay. So, essentially, this piece of legislation is quite straightforward. And actually, if you would scroll up just a tiny bit to the beginning of the next paragraph. Um, yeah. So, essentially, this is an update to the district's building code, and the amendment would essentially allow for a single entrance or egress stairway for multifamily residential buildings up to 6 stories. So we're not talking larger than 6 stories, but of course, 6 stories is a pretty typical height for new residential buildings, especially in ANC 1B. And so this definitely would be something that impacts new development here. So essentially, most building codes in the United States require 2 stairwells in multifamily buildings, and it's my understanding, and this is sort of discussed in a little bit more detail in here, is that it's really left over from early fire codes that focused on evacuation versus on of residents versus on doing other things to improve fire safety, like building materials and science and stuff like that. So, since these 2 stairwells were requirement was implemented, uh, our ability to prevent and fight fires has significantly changed and improved. And in particular, it doesn't exist in a lot of, I mean, this says global cities, but for instance, it doesn't exist in Seattle, it doesn't exist in New York. They all allow single story buildings. And so part of this is just like a very straightforward change to building code that would allow buildings up to 6 stories to only have one stair for egress. And part of the reason for that is, my understanding at least, is that it uh, helps the construction of the building be more affordable. So I think this is a really interesting, at least in my um, understanding of it, it's a very interesting way of addressing affordability issues when it comes to the development of new buildings. Um, and then, Karen, if you scroll down just a little bit, um, yeah, so this is an interesting point too that I talked with Councilmember Nadeau's legislative director about, but the bill is arguing that the efficiency of point access buildings where there's a single stairwell makes it easier to build larger bedroom units and improve access to light and ventilation. I think that this is generally true, although I think that there's a lot of other things that might impact that. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's the primary benefit of this. I do think the primary benefit of this would be the reduction in construction costs that are required with a second egress. Um, and I think that this is kind of like a common sense thing. I will say we are doing this in Virginia, and it I was speaking to some planning colleagues of mine and who have been involved in the potential implementation of this in Alexandria. So I know a little bit about how that process is moving along within Virginia. But anyway, it seems very straightforward. It seems relatively uncomplicated. The bill itself is only 3 pages compared to the 37 of our previous bill. What I will say is that we are a little bit behind the 8 ball on this because it has already made it out of committee. my understanding is that it has already made it out of committee and it is going to be heard at the full council on the 18th. So we are slightly behind. And I was asking the council member's office what the most impactful, like if this is something that we want to weigh in on, what the most impactful way for us to do that is. And he suggested that we um, work with after if the bill gets adopted by council, which he seemed to think that it would be based on how it was moving through committee. But if the bill gets adopted by council, it then has to be implemented through policy, and that at that point, it's something that we would be able to more effectively participate in by providing guidance to the to DOB when it comes to actually implementing this through policy change. So it's a little bit, I think the concept of a resolution about this is a little bit moot because it has moved beyond the point. My understanding, at least, is that it's moved beyond the point in council where a resolution would be super impactful. Um, but I wanted to bring it forward for us to discuss anyway because it seems like, in my opinion at least, it seems like a worthwhile thing for us to consider. And so if we have an appetite for this and we think this is a good idea, I'm happy to return to it if the implementation process gets started with DOB. Any questions? I see there's a.
Do you need me to stop sharing or continue sharing?
You can leave it up
Okay.
if you want. I think that's fine. Um, and I see Courtney, you shared an article that offers a few different interpretations to that. I'm gonna add it in the chat too. But I'm wondering if anyone has any questions about this.
I actually have a question
Yeah.
because I mean, I know that, everyone wants to fast track stuff, and this, I'm always concerned about multifamily buildings that has only one access point, especially it's a little nightmarish when you think about people if there's a fire in a building.
Yeah.
I always think about it from that perspective. I always look at it from the safety perspective whenever it comes to these types of dwellings, and because we've seen instances where just recently out in Silver Spring where you from the building access points, and there was a fire in the building, and I'm always concerned about that. So I know that they tried to put some stuff in, but I really want to see a little bit more on the studies about what they've delved into, and just how it actually works, not conceptually, but really works a little bit more. I need to study this a little bit more. That's my personal thought.
I think that would be an interesting yeah, I think it would be interesting to learn more about that when it comes to the implementation of it because I wonder if there are additional, to your point, Karen, if there are additional things that could be included in the implementation of the policy that would address those concerns. Um, so that's a good thing for us to keep in our brains. Devin, you are next.
Yeah, uh, Karen, definitely worth studying for it. There is a lot of evidence supporting single staircases. The United States is actually quite behind the ball as far as it's concerned, and it is something that actually used to be legal in the United States. My building was built in the 1920s and is a single staircase building. Uh, I guess there's a fire escape if you want to count that. But ladder trucks and technology and firefighting, especially when it comes to fire protected stairwells, has dramatically advanced since these laws were written. And the benefits that come with single stairwell buildings are pretty significant in terms of saving costs for the developer, but also in terms of, like this says on screen here, enhancing the floor space that is usable for the actual end customer. There's a lot of value in it. Seattle has already legalized single stairwell buildings across the city. or at least in Seattle proper. And there's not been any measured change in like fire risk or fire safety protocols. There have not been any major like incidents led back to the single stairwell like approach to building construction, but there have been many new buildings constructed that help to serve multiple like larger families in a single unit and things like that. I definitely think this is something we should continue to follow up on as vigorously as possible. It's about time the city does it, especially with our height restrictions.
I definitely agree with the follow up and Aaron. I just my concern and I'm one of those fortunate people who lives in a building that was built in 1908 and and has actually the front stair and the back stair, and I've seen the congestion that can happen if there's a fire drill. And and so and if we didn't have the back stair, we would really be in a and we're just 4 stories, and we'll have a serious issue. And the front stair is just not as conducive to people with mobility issues, people rushing. You so I've seen this, and and I've been in the city for quite some time, but I just want to be clear that I always look at this from a point of view, a actually real time safety point of view. So that's why I was curious.
Are you still there, Karen? Also, Karen, feel free to stop sharing your screen because I think you were cutting. I didn't miss anything that you said, but you were cutting in and out. So I wonder if maybe if you stopped sharing your screen, you'd have a little bit more
Oh,
audio.
was it completely garbled?
No.
No,
I heard you
I
just fine. You just there was a period where you slowed way down and then you went back up.
That was
But
my country drawl.
yeah, right. Um, Devin, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
no, I think it would
Okay,
probably be in our interest to put some like we can get some literature together to help get folks comfortable with the idea. That
sure,
might be a productive use of our time while waiting for it to move through
sure.
the committee.
All right, Aaron.
Sorry, I was going to say a lot of what Devin already said.
Oh.
Sorry, excuse me. And I'm glad Devin went first because he said it far more articulately than I ever could. But yeah, I think it would be a good idea for us to put literature on this because there's a very strong evidence base for this.
I'm happy to share. So I'll share what Courtney wrote, which is from or Courtney sent, which is from NFPA, who's I don't remember what that stands for. Um, National Fire Professionals Association, I think. But then I also sent something about it from the American Planning Association. So those are two professional organizations. And I also was just looking at that Pew article too, Devin. And I know Karen Brueggemann, you shared some stuff about the public testimony.
Yeah, there were like dozens of people that were there from various housing associations and developers, and there's lots of research and whatnot in their testimony, like a lot of things cited. So just another source.
Great.
So are these lobbying groups or are they actual residents in these buildings?
I think
That's
it's
what I'm
both,
always
but I know if we're
curious.
looking at statistics or research, some of the same studies that they point to are probably the same ones that we would find in pointing out. There's also perspectives on both sides for what it's worth.
Cool. So that would be a good place to go for looking for community feedback.
Karen, was yours from Pew? Because I do trust theirs. I look at their research all the time, but I don't know why I missed your
I'll
share.
send it out in an email, Karen. The one that Karen sent is from the public testimony in front of DC Council. But then I see Devin also sent something from Pew, I sent something from the American Planning Association, and Courtney sent something through the Q&A that is from NFPA. And they're all the one from NFPA is sort of like a here's both perspectives on this debate, but it is a fire safety organization, so that's kind of the lens through which they're looking at it is primarily fire safety. So you might actually be really interested in that if that's of interest. And then the Planning Association one, because it's the Planning Association, is mostly oriented around affordable housing development and how this can make it more affordable. So that's the lens through which the American Planning Association is looking at it. And I haven't really read the Pew one yet, uh, but just based on the initial description of it, looks like it's oriented around the question about building safety. So you might also be really interested in that one too, Karen, because that seems like that I know that building safety is something that you talk about all the time, thankfully. And you have lots of really great stuff to help us along the way on that. Okay, so I think fortunately for us, we do have with regard to this, we do have a lot of opportunity for us to explore this in more depth because, like I mentioned earlier, we're a little bit behind the um, legislative process on this. And so I don't think that this will be something to for us to be updating ourselves on for our next committee meeting, which is on April 20th. But based on what I was when I was talking with Councilmember Nadeau's legislative director, he thought that it would be more likely to be something that would come in front of the it would come out of the council, be approved if it were approved, it would be approved by the council shortly, and then it would enter the implementation phase in May. And so at that point is when we can really return to it, I think, and dive into the nitty gritty about what this policy looks like when we actually implement it through our building code. Um, I will also mention that we're still planning to ask. We're sort of figuring out exactly what the ask is, but the commission is interested in having the Department of Buildings back out to the commission to give us an update about the building collapse on V Street. And so that whenever we do that would be an opportunity to also talk to the Department of Buildings about the single stair question if it's something that is makes it out of council. So that will be a good opportunity for us to return to the question of building safety, generally speaking. So before I move on to just one additional update, I want to make sure that if there are any, I want to see if there are any other questions about this particular piece of legislation. Okay. Hearing none. Uh, I want to quickly preview our next committee meeting, which will be on April 20th. I'm trying very hard to get someone from Councilmember Nadeau's office here to discuss, and Councilmember White's office or Councilmember White's office to discuss the omnibus bill, and then of course also the fair share amendment. And then we will have a we just had a zoning map amendment case filed on Thursday last week, so it was a little bit too late to have at this committee meeting um, because it didn't meet our public notice requirement. But we will be able to have it at our next committee meeting. So I will share that information I'll share the application with all of you so that you can get a good head start on looking through that. But that applicant is already planning to be at our meeting on the 20th. And then in May, like I mentioned earlier, we're hoping to get our friends at DOB to come back to the ZPD, although they might be more interested in going to the ANC. It sort of depends on what they're feeling. We have not sent the ask yet, but that's happening soon. And then the other thing that I wanted to just update everybody on is that we are moving forward with the joint committee on the comprehensive plan. It is moving a little bit slow. We're trying to coordinate some stuff with the Office of Planning so that we can make sure that we have some assistance from them in updating ourselves on that process. But just to give you a sense of where we are, we're in the process of identifying committee members, and I know that three of you had previously or well, more than three of you from this committee had previously asked about being on the um, joint task force. And then at least two of you are also committee members of another committee, and so we'll have very good uh, ZPD representation on this task force. Um, we are just finalizing some of those things, but the committee will be jointly facilitated by myself, Commissioner Fay, who chairs economic development, and then Commissioner Holden, who chairs the transportation. They changed the name of it not too long ago. Transportation, Parks, and Public Spaces Committee. Um, so we are working out how that facilitation works because obviously there's three of us, so we're not all going to be facilitating at once. But it just gives us the ability to manage the committee a little bit more agilely because it will be meeting a little bit more frequently than once a month. So that's the update there. There will be more updates about that to come once we sort of get ourselves off the ground, but we're plugging away at that. Um, I think that is all of my business updates. Um, is there anybody else who has any updates that they would like to share before we adjourn for today? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for this very productive conversation. We have some good questions to send back to our friends in our various council members' offices. So I will make sure to get that information or those questions to them. I will take the information that we have shared in this chat and I'll share that with all of you about the One Front Door so that we can learn a little bit more about that. And next committee meeting, I'll also follow up with a working draft of the resolution, a possible resolution for um, the second piece of legislation that we discussed, whose name I'm forgetting because it's late. The Fair Share Targets Housing Act. Thank you. Patrick, were you going to mention something?
No.
Okay, fabulous. As always, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you all for joining, and have a good rest of your night. I hope you stay dry.
Thank you. Have a beautiful night.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good
Bye
one.
bye.